Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Pei 80 in Sanhedrin. Let me share my screen and we will really get started. Here we go. And yesterday we ended with a cliffhanger. In the Mishnah on Ayin Tedem Bet, we saw the following debate. Tanakama said that if someone convicted of a capital crime gets mixed up into a group, everyone is exempt from execution. And Rabbi Yehuda said everyone in the group is jailed and fed barley to cause their stomachs to explode. That is a pretty big extreme. So the problem is that it's unclear who the other members of the group would be, such that the Tanakama would say exempt, while Rabbi Yehuda has them all killed. So yesterday we saw two potential answers. Answer number one was Rabbi Abahu in the name of Shmuel. We'll just call that Shmuel's answer. And he says, we are dealing with a murderer whose verdict was not yet finalized, but the judges had all decided, so they just didn't finalize the verdict. And so as a result, with others whose verdicts were completed. So as a result, you've got 9 convicts that are sentenced to death. And you got one guy who the judges have decided that they're going to convict him. But they had to rest over the night because you don't finish any of these decisions during the nighttime, and you always have to have a resting a night of in between. And so as a result, they wake up the next morning and now they're not sure which of the guys, the 10 guys in the jail, one of them is their now convict, the not yet convicted convict, and the other 9 are already convicted and they're not sure which is which. And so as a result, what do? So in that situation, according to Shmuel, Rabbi Yehuda would say that we can just jail them all, feed them barley, and they'll all die of this stomach explosion. And so Reish Lakish says, "No, that can't be. It can't be that Rabbi Yehuda would take that position because everybody agrees that you need to have the final verdict and know who the subject is. It's not enough to bring them all in and say, well, we know that one of you is the person that we're supposed to convict, and so we're going to convict you now in the presence of everybody else, but we don't know which of you. You have to know which guy it is. And so as a result, Reish Lakish says, we're going to change the whole topic. We're going to...
Are we saying that all of these people were already convicted of something?
No. 9 of them were convicted of something. 9 of them were convicted of a capital crime. One is about to be convicted, but was not yet convicted. That's exactly what we're saying. That's what...
Right. So ultimately, they're all liable. All of them are liable for death penalty then, right?
Correct. But except that we haven't actually had the final decision for the last guy. And so as a result... That's why according to Shmuel, that's the machlokas between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda. And according to Reish Lakish says, no, can't be. You need to have the convict specifically in front of you, and you have to be talking directly to that convict, and you have to know who it is in order to convict them. And unless you do that, this person is not a convict, and as a result can go free. That is... the position that Reish Lakish says everybody agrees to, the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, and as a result, we cannot interpret the Mishnah the way Shmuel does. And so as a result, he says, we're talking about something completely different. We're talking about oxen, not human convicts, but oxen convicts. That because all these oxen, or at least one ox, did some goring and killed somebody. And we have a commandment in the Torah that we need to perform skila, stoning against this ox. And so now, again, that ox, its verdict was not finalized, and it got mixed in with oxen whose verdicts were finalized. And so as a result, that's why we're going to say that we're just going to, that according to the first opinion, we're going to say, no, we're just going to, we can't convict them. We can't kill them. And so as a result, we're just going to let them all go. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, we can kill them all. We can kill them all. So Rava is now going to ask. Rava's very upset by all of this. He doesn't think that either of these approaches are correct. And Rava's question is an incredibly powerful question. So let's take a look and we'll understand Rava's question. And then we will reread our Mishnah in a new way according to Rava. So
Can't they just ask them?
On Ayin Tet Amud Aleph. Go ahead. I'm Ayin Tet Amud Bet. Yes, go ahead.
Can't they just ask them? Were you the one who was convicted? All the 9 people, were you convicted? Were you convicted one after the other? You could just ask them, right?
You do know the famous line that we say that if you ask anybody in jail whether you were wrongfully convicted, they're going to say they're innocent. They're 100% innocent. So what do you expect all of the 10 would say? I'm the one that hasn't yet been convicted. They're all going to say that I'm the one who hasn't yet been convicted, because even in their mind, they're going to think, oh, maybe I could get out if I'm the one who hasn't been convicted. Maybe it won't, the conviction won't stand, or maybe whatever. So, I mean, you could try to ask. I'm not sure that even if one were to say I was the guy, we would believe him. But in any event, most likely you're not gonna, the point is that you need, the judges need to know who it is. And again, I can understand why this whole thing, it seems it's far-fetched in that how in the world could this possibly happen? Especially in the old days before fingerprints and DNA, etc. One can certainly easily imagine how it could happen. But, with modern technologies, this has become less and less likely. But in any event, even if we just, the way I would propose to think about it is it's a theoretical question. You don't have to say that this actually could happen, especially in modern times. It probably couldn't, but it actually could happen, especially if we sort of were to lose certain technological advances that we've had. You can imagine how it could happen. But okay, so Amar Rava, again, I don't think that it would be sufficient, even if the person were to admit that I'm the one, that would be enough, unless it caused the people to remember, oh yes, now I remember that it was you. Amar Rava, so Rava says, this cannot be. It can't be either that we're talking about 9 convicted people and 1 person who has not yet been convicted, and it can't be talking about oxen, because of the following. Ihachi, hainu de ketani Allah, Rabbi Yossi afilu abba chalafta beinehen. Well, 1 second. Rabbi Yossi taught in a brisa regarding our Mishnah that he said, even if Abba Chalafta, meaning my father Chalafta, was among the people, the main group, not that he was the new convict, but he was the main group, even the law would not change even if my father was in that group. So, first of all, if we're talking about oxen, it makes absolutely no sense, right? Because what is his father doing mixed in? Pretty easy to tell a person from an ox. So that's not going to be a great situation. And let's take a look at the top Rashi. Ihachi haditani Allah, bein l'reish lakish, bein l'shmuel, kamosiv ihachi. That this question of ihachi is asked both according to Reish Lakish and according to Shmuel. Again, Reish Lakish, it's easy to understand because we're talking about animals and this is a person. So clearly, Reish Lakish's answer doesn't work for us, because Dahani Acherim Demasnisin Derotzchen Kamar, because, and even if it's according to Shmuel that it's the murderers that we're talking about, Bahairot Serechnis Arav Buhukar Ulbasovnis Arav Kamar, and we're talking about a murderer who we originally recognized but then got mixed up, and we don't know. Haditani Allah bebrisa, that which we learned in a brisa. Hachi rotzeh shenis arav ba'acherim kulan peturin, and we say that all of them are going to be exempt. Amar Rabbi Yossi afilu abba chalafta b'nehen, that even if my father Chalafta, who was a very righteous person, was mixed in with them, the law would be the same. But 1 second, it seems odd, because it wouldn't be even. It would be, and of course, if my father were mixed in with the other group, they would be exempt. Kulan Peturin. Maya filu de kama Rabbi Yossi. What kind of a filu is Rabbi Yossi talking about? And even if you say, okay, so my father turns out that he was a murderer, turns out that Abba Khalafta was a murderer. And so, but what difference does it make? Meaning, the bottom line is that he was convicted, and so as a result, there's a sense that his statement makes no sense. So as a result, Rava is going to break our Mishnah into two pieces. And he's going to say that the first piece where we say putter is talking about one case. And the second piece where Rabbi Yehuda says that we're going to put them in jail and cause them their stomachs to burst is a different piece. And let's take a look and see how he does so. So Ella Amar Rava Hachikamar. Shnayim Shahayu Omdim, V'yatza Chetz Mi Beinehem, V'harag, Shneihem Peturim. That what is our Mishnah saying? Our Mishnah is saying, when it says, Rotseach shenis ariv ba'acherim, it's saying, if there's somebody who shot an arrow and murdered somebody, and he was mixed up, meaning that we don't know which of two people it is, but because we know that one of them shot the gun, but all we see now, it's sort of like an extra step of the classic of what it means when a judge will tell people, what does it mean beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? So beyond a shadow of a doubt, they'll often say, listen, if you see a person run into a room with a gun, and you see another person go into that room, and then you see the person with the gun, and you hear the gun shoot, and then you see the person with the gun walk out of the room, and you then go into the room and see that the person's dead, you can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt that person committed the crime. But now we're dealing
with still circumstantial evidence.
What?
It's still circumstantial evidence.
100%. I'm telling you what U.S. law is. I'm not telling you what the halacha is. That we would not convict a person in that situation according to halacha. But what I'm trying to get to is the one level beyond that is our situation, because our situation is that you have two people go into the room with the gun, and we know that there was only one gunshot. So we know that one of them shot the gun, but we don't know which one shot the gun. So as a result, and we could even have seen from a distance, the shooting. We're just not sure which of the two people did the shooting. So that's the situation. And Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Afilu Abba Chalav Beinehem. Even if my father was one of those two people who is extraordinarily righteous, we take a look at Ella Amar Rava, and we'll see how he goes through it. We're going to say that we're not going to say that the other person must have been the shooter, because we don't know for 100%. So let's take a look. Rashi, second of the narrow lines on the top of Pei Amanal. El Amar Rava b'shelo hukar lebeisdin. We're talking about where the people are not recognizable to the beis Ka'amar, Kagon Shnayim Omdim, two people are standing, V'yatza Ches min beinehem, and a shot goes out from between them. We know it comes from one of them. Ve'einu yodin is mehen zarkan. We don't know which of them sent it out. Shneim Peturim, both of them are putter. And Amar Rabbi Yossi afilu Abba Chalafta beinehem, even if my father was among them. Sha'kol yodin shehu chassid. Everybody knows how righteous he is. V'lo zarku, he certainly wasn't the one who shot it. Lo mechayvin le'idach. We're not going to say that the other one is liable. Mishum hai chazaka, because of that basic understanding of, because not was, due to the understanding that my father was such a chassid. Ubaha, and on this, afilu Rabbi Yehuda moda. Really? Even Rabbi Yehuda agrees. There is no disagreement in our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda de Amar Konsin, and when Rabbi Yehuda says that we have to put them away and put them in jail, Okosinosan, we put them in jail, Lakipa, into a small room, Lo Allah Kai. It's not on that. Ella Hakikamar. This is what he's saying. Hakikamar Tanakama. This is what the Tanakama is saying. V'chasuri mechsera, and our misnisin v'hakitani. And our Mishnah is missing something. And now keep your finger in the Rashi, and let's go back into the Gemara. We're now on the fifth line in the Gemara, third word on the line. V'shur shenigmar dino. And now the Gemara says, and if on the other hand you have an ox whose conviction has been confirmed, then that now gets mixed in with oxen that have not been convicted, Solkin Osan, we will do Soklin Osan. We will do skila on all of them, according to the Tanakama. So indeed, the irony is that it's the reverse of Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish had said that if we had one that was not yet convicted among 9 that were convicted, we were going to let all the oxen go. Here, Rava is saying it's the exact opposite. You put one convicted one that in with 9 others that have not been convicted, and what happens? All of them get skila. Now we're going to see why in a moment. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer konsen osan lakipa. And Rabbi Yehuda says you don't need to put them in the. You don't need to do skila to all of them. You have to, but you do have to kill them all. So you just put them all in jail and you let them starve to death. So let's go back into that Rashi. We're again now in the Rashi 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 lines down in the Rashi, the shore. So now Rashi is picking up with the language of the Gemara. V'shor shenigmar dino v'chulu. That was what we just said. We're dealing with a case of an ox whose conviction has been completed. Soklin oso. We're going to do skila to it. Daha al karcha kulhu asiri. All 10 of these are prohibited to benefit from, because there is a law that says that when you convict an ox of killing someone, not only do you have to do skila, but you're not allowed to have any benefit from that ox whatsoever. And so now that ox gets mixed in with other oxen, and we're not sure which ox it is, all of them, we don't say batal berov, we say rather there's no bittul in this case, because each ox it has a sufficient significance on its own, and so as a result, we're not going to say bittul, and as a result, all of them become prohibited to benefit from, and so kulo asiri bahana ve'ein hefsed l'balim biskila, and so as a result, there's no loss to doing skila to all of them. Hilkach soklin otam. That's therefore we're going to do skila to all of them. Kadei shetitkayim mitzvahs skila b'mechuyavba. So at least we'll have done the mitzvah of skila for the one that we're supposed to do skila for. You have a question?
Isn't that the opinion?
Yes, at a price, because 1 second, Kenneth, because Stan was saying, yes, it's definitely at a price, meaning it's a big price because everybody else is losing their ox. Now, unfortunately, it shows that maybe you need to brand your oxen, because if you knew which ox was yours, then you would be able to say, I know this ox isn't it, because it's mine. All right, and konsen osola kipa. Now, why does Rabbi Yehuda say that you don't have to do skila, but rather you can do put them in jail? That's the next Rashi. She'ein sarach l'soklin. You don't have to do skila to all of them. Shalola triach beitin, because you don't need to make beitin go to all that work, because it's a lot of work. You have to throw the ox off. You have to send the stone down. Ella konsen oso, but osan. Rather, you can just put them in jail, b'cheder, in a room, v'heim meitim b'rav, and they'll eventually die of starvation because we won't feed them. And so, as a result, that is what Rabbi Yehuda is actually saying. And so our Mishnah has been completely reread according to Rava. And now everything makes sense, because the Tanakama that we have in our current Mishnah is talking about a case where one of 2 people shot somebody, but we don't know who. And even if we know that one of them is very, very righteous and is saying that he's innocent, that's not enough to convict the other one, even if they were warned. Meaning, again, we're always dealing, especially in the cases where we're dealing with the death penalty, the person was warned, the person said, yes, I understand, and even so, I'm going to do it, etc. So that's a situation. But, okay, so that
aren't we saying, who argued with Reish Lakish before? Was that Rabbi Yehuda? Was it Shmuel?
There are 3 different opinions that we had. We had Shmuel, Reish Lakish, and Rava.
Okay, so Shmuel. So now Rava, the way we're interpreting now, after Mechsur and Mechsa, that they're killing all the oxes, right? And that's against Reish Lakish. But isn't that like Shmuel though? That they killed them all?
No. Well, Shmuel was talking about human beings. You mean it's like Rabbi Yehuda in Shmuel? It's like Rabbi Yehuda in Shmuel. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yes,
That
yes.
you
I mean,
kill.
there is something that's similar, but of course, in one case, it's about humans. In Shmuel's case, it was about humans that Rebbe Yehuda was saying that. And of course, the answer is that we would not say that according to about humans ever. And so, yes, there is something where Rebbe Yehuda would say, kill them all. And now we're saying in the end that we kill them all. But the big difference is that Rebbe Yehuda was talking about human beings, and now we're talking about oxen. So that's an important difference to highlight. But you're
So we
right.
were, so according to Robert, then we were never talking about humans.
We were never talking about convicted humans, correct?
Okay, well, humans, but so I mean,
No,
it's
because the
painful.
last case, because the first case in the Mishnah, he does say we're talking about humans.
Right.
We're talking about humans where one of them did the shooting and we just don't know which. So, but they were never convicted. There was not a convict among them.
But in the beginning of the Mishnah, when we talked about 10 people, we didn't know who the one was. Was that Rebbe Yehuda or Shmuel? I lost who it was. They said they were talking about humans. You put them in a room, you give them food to eat until their
Stomachs
bellies blow
explode.
up.
Yeah, that was according to Shmuel. That was
Okay.
Rebbe Yehuda's opinion in our Mishnah that we
So
are
now
going
we
to.
switched. So we've never resolved we switched it talking about oxen, but we never resolved really what happens with humans.
No, no, no. The not quite, because the answer is that Rava would say would agree with Reish Lakish that we can never convict somebody without having actually known the identity of the person and convicted him. And so as a result, according to Rava would agree with Reish Lakish that both the Tanakama, the Chachamim, and Rebbe Yehuda would agree that if in fact you had somebody whose conviction was not yet finalized, who got mixed in with other people who, even though they were convicted, you would not be able to kill any of them, because we have somebody here who has not in fact been convicted, and until you convict the person, you cannot execute him, and as a result, we can't execute anybody, and we would do nothing to any of them. They would all essentially go free. That's the way Rava would respond. Rava agrees with Reish Lakish's problem that he had with Shmuel, and so it's only when you're dealing with oxen that you can have everybody killed, and the way we
Not
understand
everybody,
it
every
is
ox. Not everybody, every ox killed.
every body of every ox. I mean, everybody doesn't have to be human beings, but okay.
Well, okay,
All right.
but
In any event. All right, so that is, we've now clarified our Mishnah, and now we teach a brisa that highlights that this concept of what was the concept that was key to the end of Rava's comment is that if you have an ox that is subject to skila mixed up with other oxen, they all become prohibited. And so as a result, they're all useless, and therefore it makes sense to kill them all. And we have that in a brisa because of the following. Vahatanya, that we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down on Pei Amud Aleph. Second to last word on the line. Vahatanya. Parasha Hamisa Ba'achar Kach Yalda. If you have one that an ox, a cow that gave birth after it killed somebody, Im ad shalo nigmar dina yalda, if it had the child before the verdict was finalized, vlada mutar, the child is permitted. Im mishen nigmar dina yalda, but if the child was born only after the verdict, vlada asar, the child becomes forbidden. That's not going to be the part that's relevant for us, because that's just an additional law. We're going to analyze that in a moment, but the bottom line is that's the principle is that for the vlad to become prohibited, it has to be part of the verdict. So, but
That's
what?
pshita. That's pshita.
Yeah, where we'll get to the Gemara is going to address that question, meaning that he's going to try to explain. And actually, it's not so pshita. In fact, what it said is actually wrong. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. Now, if this cow that had killed somebody, we're going to understand this according to Rashi, according to the easiest way to understand this Gemara, that if this cow that killed somebody got mixed up with other cows, and now some of that mixture got mixed in with others. Okay. Then konsin osan lakipa. We put them all in a jail, and they all are going to die because again, we don't know which one is the one that's subject to skila. And Rabbi Elazar, but Rabbi Shimon Omer, Mevin osan lebeisdin v'soklan osan. And Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, says that no, we do skila to all of them. So the Tanakama in our Mishnah is like Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah is like the Tanakama in this brisa. So we can see that the machlokas that Rava creates in our Mishnah matches the machlokas that we have in this brisa, and so that is further support for Rava's understanding. Now we're going to go back to the first part of the statement about when the birth happened for the calf, and whether or not that verdict whether or not the calf becomes prohibited. Amar Mar, ad shelo nigmar dina yalda vladimuteret aval gaf the kinagcha havas miyabra. Well, 1 second. The implication of what we just said is that if the cow gave birth before the conviction, so the cow was pregnant when it gored, then it was convicted, and then it gave birth, and then it was convicted. Pregnant, gore, birth, conviction. That's the order.
Right.
And so as a result, we're going to say that it's permitted. And that's true, even though the conception happened before the goring.
But the
So
birth, right, is different.
the birth happens after that, but before the conviction. V'hamar Rava, 1 second, we have a statement of Rava, Vlad hanogachas asur, that the child of a cow that is pregnant is prohibited if the pregnant cow did the goring. And the reasoning is that the ubar, the fetus of this cow was part of the mother when it did the goring. And so as a result, it makes sense for it to be for it to be forbidden. So he uvlada nakhu, because both the mother and the offspring did the goring. So, and similarly, although not related to our topic, vlad hanirbat asur, the child of an offspring where there was bestiality, it would be prohibited. Hiyu vlada nirbu, because both of them were sodomized together. So
we have a machloket in Shas elsewhere that between uber yerach imo, uber lav yerach imo, and there's a lot of discussion about this. So
100%.
To say now that the vlad is automatically part of the mother, would be mixed up in that machloket. Would appear.
You're absolutely right. If you take a look at the next page, I'm pretty sure that the large Tosfos on Peyam and Bet is on that particular topic. We are going to see the language of Ubar Yerech Imo in just a few moments. So you are absolutely right. And this is a key Gemara to determine what the outcome is, because it's clear that according to our Gemara, Rava considers Uber Yerech Imo, and there isn't really any disagreement in this Gemara about that topic. So as a result, this Gemara certainly seems to imply Uber Yerech Imo. So let's keep going. So now we have a question, because our original understanding of our brisa doesn't work, because the brisa, 1 second, let me just scroll. Okay, we're up to the Q on the in number 2 on the screen. That our reading of the brisa doesn't work, because the way we read the brisa, it seemed like if the baby was conceived before goring and then born after goring but before conviction, the baby would be permitted. So as a result, Ema, we're going to reread it. We're 4th line from the bottom of Peyamid Aleph. Ad im ad shalo nigmar dina ibra v'yalda, if the cow conceived and gave birth before the verdict was announced, so then vlada mutar. then it's going to be permitted. So as a result, it wasn't pregnant at the time of the goring. It was just became pregnant after the goring and before the conviction. The court must have been backed up, so they weren't able to deal with the case very quickly. Nigmar Dina Ibra Valada, the Yalda. If, on the other hand, the cow conceived and gave birth after the verdict was announced, or presumably she was conceived before the conviction and gave birth after the conviction, Velen Vlada Asur, then the child would be prohibited. So Hanich Lamanda Amar Zevizet Gorim Asur. Okay, that works according to the opinion, right? To say that you would be prohibited, even if the cow that conceived and gave birth after conviction, that the baby would be prohibited, even when the conception and birth all happened after conviction. Well, that works according to the opinion where you have two causes. One of them is a prohibited cause and one is a permitted cause, and the two of them work together to create something new. Now, and here we have a prohibited cow, which is the goring cow. We have a permitted cow, which is the bull that is going to impregnate the cow. That one's permitted. They work together and the cow becomes impregnated. And now the offspring is going to be prohibited. Well, that works if we say that Zevizet Gorim is usher. But as we turn to Pei Amud Bet, according to the one that says that if you have two causes, it's going to be permitted. How do we understand it? Meaning our explanation of our brisa doesn't work according to this. So as a result, we need to come up with a third explanation of our brisa. And it can't be talking about, at least according to the opinion that says Zevizet Gorim mutter, that according to this, you have to say that actually, again, this is now our third interpretation of the brisa, second answer of our question. Ella Amaravina Ema Im Ad Shalom Nigmar Dina Ibra V'Yalda. If it before conviction, but after the goring, it had became pregnant and gave birth, Vlada Mutar. Now the offspring is permitted. That part is the same. The im ad shelo nigmar dina ibra, but if the cow conceived before the verdict, umishin nigmar dina yalda, and then only after the verdict happened, so then vlada asur. Now the child is prohibited because at the moment of conviction and the moment that the cow became totally prohibited, at that moment was the baby was inside her, and so why was it prohibited? Because uber yerech imohu, because a fetus is considered like a limb of the mother, and so as a result, that's why she's going to be the baby is going to be prohibited. And so let's take a look in the Rashi, third line down, end of the line. Mishnigmar Martina Yalda Vlada Asur Afal Gavta Lo Hava B'Shas Nagicha, even though the conception didn't happen before the goring, and so the fetus wasn't in the mother at the moment. The mother wasn't pregnant at the time of goring. Kaven Dahava B'Shas Gamardin, because the fetus existed at the moment of conviction. Nesar B'Gamardin, the conviction is enough to cause the baby to become prohibited. Im imo, with the mother. De uber yarach imohu, because the fetus is considered a limb of the mother. It's considered like the thigh of the mother. Okay, so now we've actually explained this brisa, and so now everything is working.
Can you just give a scenario of Zevizet Gorim, Mutar? What would be I understood the other one, that one would one would be permitted, but what would be an example of the cow and the bull being both permitted, and then it would be mutar?
No. So Zevizet Gorim mutar is the following: is asking the question of how do we understand this infant, right? Let's deal with a more typical situation, right? The bull is the father, and is the goring animal, and the mother is it didn't do anything. So now the bull gores and is convicted.
Right.
and now that bull goes and impregnates your cow. Your cow didn't do anything.
Right.
And so, but yet at the same time, the child, that offspring, is Zev Gorim. So as a result, it's going to be subject to our machlokas. According to the opinion, Zev Gorim is usher, that child is going to be prohibited, even though the mother who did most of the work was completely innocent, because one of the causes was the father, and the father is prohibited. We're going to say it's prohibited. On the other hand, when you have according to the opinion that says Zev Gorim is mutter, so then the child, especially in this case, will be
The first
permitted.
scenario goes right to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. Okay, so that's the situation of Zev Gorim. The easiest situation to understand is definitely the offspring case. I haven't really thought about other cases of whether or not maybe you can have a piece of wood, and some kindling. The wood is from an ashera tree, and the kindling is from something else, and you put them together, and now you created a fire. And so, is the fire going to be something that you're allowed to benefit from? Maybe that would be another situation. I'm not 100% sure.
So in the case of the bull, the mutter, the Lamand Omer says usher, that's where the mother gave birth.
No, it doesn't make a difference which parent is the usher one. As long as one of the parents is usher, the child is going to be usher, according to Zev Gorim is usher.
And the
And according
mutter,
to the one who says mutter, doesn't make a difference which way the parents go. If one of the parents is as long as one of the parents is permitted, so then we're going to say it's permitted.
okay.
Okay. So now our Mishnah mentioned kol chayve misos. If everybody who's gotten together is mixed up together, and they're all subject to the death penalty, except that they're subject to different death penalties. And we said that we would apply, that when multiple people convicted of capital offenses get mixed up, we're going to give them the least severe method of execution to which they were sentenced. So what does that imply? Shma mina musre l'davar chamor, havi musre l'davar chal. That if you warn somebody about skila, that's the most severe death penalty according to the majority opinion. So then you would have already warned them about burning and strangulation and beheading. You would have warned them about everything else. And so that should be, so shouldn't we be able to learn this from from our Mishnah, that's a sufficient warning? So I'm Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, no, not necessarily. Maybe we could dealing with the following case, where somebody gave a warning about the death penalty, but without specifying which death penalty. And who is that Tana of our Mishnah who says that giving a general warning about death penalties, but without specifying which one is sufficient? Tanya, Ushar Chayve Misos, Torah. We had a brisa which we saw earlier. When did we see this? Dalid. We saw this all the way back on Daf Chet Amud Bet in Sanhedrin, that we had where a situation where we said that when you have different kinds of sins, when it comes to all sins other than somebody who is trying to get people to do idolatry, with respect to all other sins, you need the following in order to be subject to the death penalty. Ein mimsinosan, we don't kill them. Ela be'eda, as we first of all need to have Ada is a 23 judges, because the Ada was we learned from the word congregation that you need to have 23 judges, because you need 10 to say innocent, 10 to say not guilty, and then you need 2 extra in order to convict the person. So that makes 22. And then we say we can't have an even number, so we end up with 23. So
That's the whole Gemara about the Meraglim, right? We talked about
yes, exactly. We derived that from the Meraglim. Exactly correct. The Eidim, so you need multiple witnesses. The Hasra, and you need a legitimate warning. So you need all 3 of these pieces. But the key piece for us is that you need warning. V'ad shiodiu shechayav misas based in. And what is that warning? You need to just let him know that is subject to the death penalty. What don't you need to say, according to this Tanakama of this Brisa? You don't need to say which of the death penalties. However, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, that is not sufficient. You need to tell the guy which death penalty. And so only if so it takes a chacham to be able to give the warning, right?
Damn
Because
right.
you need to know which death penalty applies. All right, so that is the machlokes. But the point is that the Tanakama of that brisa could be the author of our Mishnah, and it could be that you don't need to get it right. You just need to be general, and it's sufficient to be general, even if it wouldn't be okay to be wrong.
Well, what if he gave the wrong, if in his warning, he gave the wrong death penalty? He's a chacham, but not such a chacham.
Right. So that's that. So that would be the machlokes that would be. It's not clear what the halacha would be according to our Mishnah, because you could read our Mishnah as saying that as long as you warn. So first of all, the question is did you warn him of a more severe death or a less severe death? If you warned him of a less severe death, everybody's going to agree that's not going to be a good enough warning. If you warned him of a more severe death, then you could potentially read our Mishnah as saying that that's sufficient, but it's not a definitive proof, because maybe our Mishnah is talking about no warning. And as a result, at least at the moment, it would seem that warning with too severe a death penalty may end up letting the person go. And so you are better off just warning plain about the death penalty and not getting it wrong. So that would be,
Good advice.
but that would be the good advice. Although I will note that it does seem, based on the placement of the gimel here in the Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah, that it does seem like the Rambam paskins like Rabbi Yehuda, that you have to, oh, no, I'm sorry. No, my apologies. I misread the location. And so it seems like you just need to say that the death penalty is sufficient. You don't need to specify which one. And so as a result, you want to just be general, and you don't want to be specific, because if you're specific and wrong, then you may have let the guy go. Okay. So Tanakama Yalaf and Mikoshesh. The Tanakama who says that you don't need to specify the specific death penalty can learn it out from the Mikoshesh. Because what did we say a few days ago about the Mikoshesh? We said that we put him in jail. Why did we put him in jail? Because we were unsure which death penalty he was supposed to get. We knew, based on Mos Yumas, that he was going to get killed, but we just didn't know how. So in order for that killing to be somehow proper, it must be that he was given a general warning. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mikoshesh Horas Sha'isa. No, the Mikoshesh, just like the Megadev, were special circumstances. If God didn't actually command Moshe to kill these people, they would, and specifically to stone them, we would not have done it. We would not have done it on our own. We would have let them go, because those were specific cases and not cases to be determined, and not cases that we can learn from. Okay. So now we're going to conclude with the last piece from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah then gave the details, the specific examples, noting the debate between Rabbi Shimon and the Chachamim regarding whether stoning or burning is more severe. So Haniskalin ben Nisrafin, our Mishnah specifically said that you had people that were sentenced to stoning mixed among people who were sentenced to burning. Now, if I tell you that, if I say that there are people that were subject to stoning mixed among people that were subject to burning, which do you think would have more people?
The Sreifa.
The Sreifa, the burning, because I'm specifically saying, right, if I say that I've got one, X number of white marbles mixed in with in a bag of black marbles, you're going to say that the black marbles are the ones that I have more of. And that's exactly right. That's how the Gemara is going to now understand it. So Masnile Rav Yecheskel Rami Bray. So Rav Yecheskel was teaching his son some Gemara, and he said, and he was teaching him our Mishnah, Hanisrafim B'Niskalin, and he reversed it. And he says that it was dealing with a number of people sentenced to burning that were mixed among people that were sentenced to stoning. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Yidonu b'skila b'ashas sreifa chamura. And Rabbi Shimon says in that case that we give everybody skila because the burning is a more severe form of punishment. So Amarle Rav Yehuda, who happens to be Rav Yecheskel's son, says to him, Abba, Lo tisnaihu tisnaye le haki. Don't learn it like that. You shouldn't teach that, because if you teach it that way, the reasoning that you would give everybody skila may not be because skila is the less severe punishment. It may be because the majority of the people in the group are subject to skila, because we said the burnings are in the stonings. So my area disreifa chamura. Why does he need to? Why did Rabbi Shimon need to say that the sreifa is more severe? It's sufficient to just note that the majority are being stoned. So Rabbi Yecheskel asked, Elaheki asne. So how should I learn it? How should I teach this? Hanisgalim b'nisrafin. The way our Mishnah is, you teach the fact that the stoning people, the people who are sentenced to stoning, are mixed among the people who are sentenced to burning. So Ihaki Ema Seifa 1 second. Rabbi Yecheskel says to his son, Rabbi Yehuda, what about the end of the Mishnah? The end of the Mishnah says, they specifically say that in this case of Niskalin Binisrafin, what they say that you do Sreifa instead of Skila. But Tepuk Deruba Nisrafin inhu. They should just say that you do it because it's the majority. So why do they bother to say that it's the more severe? So Hasam Rabbanan who de Amran Leila Rabbi Shimon. Now you have to understand that the rabbis were responding to Rabbi Shimon. Lidi Dr. Amrat Sreifa Chamura. According to you, you say that burning is more important. But no, you're wrong. Lo, Skila Chamura. Skila is more important. So it wasn't that they were responding to the situation. They weren't teaching specifically about an Iskalim ben Nisrafin. They were rather responding to Rabbi Shimon's comment about Nisrafin being more chamor and saying, no, Skila is more chamor. So now that's how we conclude. And so as a result, we can understand why our Mishnah is Niskalim ben Nisrafin. But now Shmuel comes and teaches us a lesson for the ages. Amar le Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Shinina. So Rabbi Shmuel, who saw this interchange, says to Rabbi Yehuda, "You're a sharp one." Meaning, you're smart. I know that you're smart, but listen to the following: Lo temalei lavucha. You're not supposed to speak to your father that way. Not supposed to speak to your father that way. Ditanya. If you see your father violating some Torah law, lo yomar lo. You should not say to him, Abba, avarta al divrei Torah. Dad, you're violating the Torah. You shouldn't say that. Ella omer lo Abba, kach siba Torah. You should rather say to him, Dad, does it say that you could do this in the Torah?
Better.
Now, that is better.
That is better.
But the response is, hainu hach. One second. You're still being a little bit obnoxious, right? I'm reading it the way Rashi understands it. This is a question, right? To take a look at second line on Pei Aleph Amid Aleph. We're now on Pei Aleph Amid Aleph. Ela Omer lo Abba kach kasu b'Torah kasalkadaitek bitmiya ka'amar. At the moment, the Gemara assumes that we're asking a question. The chi kach kasu b'Torah. Did the Torah write that you could do this? Now, but at the same time, there's something that just doesn't feel right about that, because at the end of the day, you're telling your dad that he violated the Torah. So, Ela Omer lo. So rather, you should say to him, Abba, mikra kasav b'Torah kach. Don't ask about the action that he took. Tell him what the Torah says, and don't say any comment about what he did.
Better yet. Okay,
and that way you can read it. So the point is the Torah says. So I see, somebody sees their father wearing shatnez, and so they say to their father, "Listen, the Torah says that we don't wear
polyester and
wool and linen," and so as a result, that is the correct way of going about it. And so let's
What's
take a
the
look
difference between kach? What's the difference between kach kativ b'Torah and katuv b'Torah kachu?
So the difference is am I the way I'm going to understand this is, again, instead of saying to my father, does it say in the Torah that you're allowed to wear wool and linen? Because that suggests that my father is wearing wool and linen. Instead, you should say, it says in the Torah you're not allowed to wear wool and linen.
Better.
Okay? Because that way, I'm not commenting on what my father is doing. I'm not saying that he's doing it. I'm just saying what it says in the Torah. Now, if you don't think that that's sufficient, the Rambam says that that actually even here it's supposed to be a question. But the question is a different question. Again, instead of the negative question of saying, Dad, doesn't it say in the Torah you're not allowed to do what you're doing? Instead, it says it's a question is, Dad, doesn't it say in the Torah that this is what you're supposed to do? And thereby, you're asking it as a question according to the Rambam, and you're telling him what the Torah says, but you're not actually in any way contradicting or conflicting with your father. So with that, that brings us to the next Mishnah, which addresses what happens when one person is subject to two different death penalties. But for that, stay tuned for tomorrow's
But
time.
you're still using a negative term when you say, doesn't it say? You could say,
Right, that you're not allowed to, shouldn't say the doesn't it say.
right,
That's
when you said the Rambam, you in both situations you're saying, doesn't it say?
No. If I said that the Rambam was saying that doesn't, I misspoke. The Rambam would say that instead of saying that Dad, the Torah says that you should that you can't have wool and linen. Instead of saying it that way, you're going to ask your father, Dad, does it say in the Torah that you can't wear wool and linen? Okay, and so that way you ask the question. You're not suggesting that your father did anything wrong. You're focusing on the positive, and again, you're hoping that your father will realize from the question what you're supposed to do. Again,
it seems like the Gemara though is saying that the way Rashi learned that the first phrase is the question that we should not do, but the second is a statement, and that would be permitted. So
correct. That's exactly right. That's what Rashi says. That's exactly right. That's why
you're reversing it.
What was that?
You're reversing it now. You're saying the Rambam is saying you shouldn't
so
say
the Rambam just clearly says that in the end you ask it as a question. How the Rambam understands the original Havamina of the Gemara is unclear. But the point is that I would suggest that the Havamina, it could just be that the Havamina of the Gemara is, according to the Rambam, is Rashi's Maskana. It's unclear. But the bottom line is that the Rambam ends up with saying that you should ask it as a question. But it's clear, according to Rashi, that you would make it as a statement.
It seems like the Gemara, you could read both of them as statements. And Rashi wants to say it's a question, but you could read Abba kach kativ b'Torah. And then you say later, no, you say it this way, katuv b'Torah kachu.
Well, you got to find the difference between them, because clearly there's a Havamina, and then there's the Maskana. So it clearly can't be that you're saying the exact same thing, because then how does the answer the question, right? Clearly, the Gemara assumes that the first way of speaking and the way that they were originally interpreting the Baraisa is not really any difference from telling your father that you violated a Torah law. So the question is what is it that is not any different from telling your father that you violated a Torah law? So Rashi says that the thing that's not different from telling your father that you violated the Torah law is to ask it as a question about what your father's doing and say, Dad, does it all say in the Torah that you're allowed to wear wool and linen together? And meaning that the answer is, of course not. Now, with Rashi, it's very clear that that's the question. And the answer is, of course, that you just make a statement. You just say that it's that you know what the right thing is. According to the Rambam, he's we don't know. It's not clear in the Rambam what the Havamina of our Gemara is, because he's not a parish on the Gemara. But what he does say in terms of how we should deal with the situation is that we should ask our father, is this the halacha with respect to shatnez, that you don't wear wool and linen? And so as a result, he's definitely saying that the end is a question, and the end is a question about the facts. And so clearly the first part of the statement is either it could be that he's saying that the first part of the question is to just state it as a fact, that the Torah says that you're not allowed to wear wool and linen. And so even that, according to the Rambam, is too similar to saying to your father, that you're violating the Torah law.
It's still, the Gemara and Rashi seems to flow a little better. I'm having difficulty with the Rambam.
I totally am with you, 100%. The bottom line is that the way I would phrase it is the following: you can read both the language that we had, you can read either way with a question mark at the end, right? You can read Abba ka kasav b'Torah, and you can read Abba mikra b'katuv b'Torah kach. Both of them can be turned into questions. So the question is which one is the statement and which one is the question? You can read it both ways. So as a result, everybody's bringing their own approach to it. So Rashi says that the first way is the question and the second way is the statement. And the Rambam would potentially say that the first way is the statement and the second way is the question. We're just always trying to be more respectful. The bottom line is that we need to be respectful to our parents. And so it's an important lesson that we can all take. And God willing, we should, by fulfilling that mitzvah, we should be earn the arichas yamim that it says Alan Yirbu. So, wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.